microscopic germs hidden from the naked eye. Throughout history, these mysterious invaders have wreaked havoc on mankind with devastating outbreaks of disease. The best minds of science have searched for the origins of these epidemics. Now, a respected astrobiologist suggests that some of the worst pandemics may have come from outer space.
I think every new epidemic disease had come from space originally at one point in time.
If this controversial theory is correct, it could help solve the mystery of the origins of some of the deadliest epidemics in history. For thousands of years, people had no idea what caused diseases and how they were spread. Then, in the mid-19th century, scientists discovered that some diseases were caused by microbes called bacteria. 50 years later, scientists discovered even smaller disease-causing agents called viruses.
It wasn't until the 1920s, 30s, or 40s that we had devices like electron microscopes that would allow us to see these very tiny viruses, visualize them, and figure out a little bit about them.
Although the origins of some diseases have remained a mystery, science has been able to answer many of the questions about how germs are transmitted. Throughout history, diseases were often spread by travelers.
As long as people have been traveling, so too have the germs that reside in those beings.
Science has made enormous progress in understanding the transmission of germs. And yet, the best minds have been unable to answer one basic question: where do diseases originate? In answer to this question, Chandra Wickramasinghe, the director of the Cardiff Center for Astrobiology, has advanced a controversial new theory. He believes that some of mankind's deadliest pandemics have emanated not from Earth, but from outer space. Chandra's work began over 3 decades ago in conjunction with the late astronomer Sir Fred Hoyle. They investigated the possibility that life is not confined to Earth.
Life is indeed a truly cosmic phenomenon, that it's not an earthbound thing, that we are part of a connected chain of being that goes through the comets to the remotest parts of our universe.
This theory is known as panspermia, the hypothesis that life on Earth originated elsewhere in the universe.
There has to be an enormous range in the types of microorganisms that are around in the cosmos. We have interacted and we have in fact evolved from a subset of these microorganisms. We have to conclude that our genetic ancestors still lurk amongst the stars.
Chandra believes that the seeds of life were transported to Earth by comets 4 billion years ago. Chandra believes that some viruses could survive even the harshest conditions in space. The notion that disease-causing organisms come from space may explain the odd patterns of certain historical epidemics. In some Eskimo villages, up to 90% of the population died. Doctors of infectious disease say this is a perfect example of viral naivety, in which a population without immunity is more vulnerable to a disease. Still, this does not explain how the epidemic jumped from one isolated village to another.
They had to use the most tedious ways to go from one end of Alaska to another. And the person-to-person contact is just impossible in those situations.
What about an alien infection brought here by a returning spacecraft? The stuff of science fiction, perhaps, but experts treat the possibility very seriously. The notion that it is dangerous to move material from one planet to another has been a concern of many scientists involved with space exploration. Article 9 of the 1967 Outer Space Treaty, signed by more than 90 nations, dictates that all countries will avoid harmful contamination of the Earth.
When we sent astronauts to the moon during the Apollo program, the provisions of the Outer Space Treaty were put to their first test. At the time the astronauts came back, they were quarantined, along with the rocks and samples that they brought back.
NASA continues to be concerned that a returning space probe could bring back an alien organism that would infect our biosphere.
What's the probability that that sample might have something in it that could be infectious or biohazardous to humans? It's very low, but not zero.
In the search for extraterrestrial life, NASA scientists have long considered the planet Mars the best nearby candidate.
If you move organisms from one place to another place, beyond where they would normally disperse, you can have surprising outcomes when the new populations interact with each other.
NASA's policy is to treat any sample as hazardous until proven otherwise. In the quest to return a Mars sample to Earth, NASA has anticipated just about everything that might go wrong.
Space flight is a risky business. Probably the biggest threat would be that it crashed and was exposed to the environment.
It looks like we have a no-shoot, sir. Vector 200. Put it on your nose.
An accident is a very real possibility, as evidenced from the crash of the Genesis capsule in 2004. NASA engineers will safeguard against this possibility by building a craft that is designed to handle a hard landing. Even if the capsule crashes, the container that holds the Mars sample will remain intact.
The capsule would be picked up at that point and transported to a quarantine module and then to a receiving lab.
This facility would meet Biosafety Level 4 containment standards.
Biosafety Level 4 is the maximum containment used by Center of Disease Control and others when handling the most virulent organisms on Earth. Not because we think that a virulent organism would be in the sample, but because we don't know. And in that uncertainty, we want to take the conservative route, which means to treat it the strictest way you can until you know more.